So post-workout, if you don't take in carbohydrates, if you're like, oh, I got to make my fight weight, I'm not going to eat post-workout, that cortisol stays elevated and your muscle breakdown post-workout stays elevated. If you take in your carbohydrates, you're going to spike your insulin, so your cortisol goes down. Okay? So then you can actually begin the repair process of the muscles that you just worked out. And once you start repairing them, then you can start regrowing them. Okay? And so that's one thing. Another thing that it does, by taking in the carbohydrates, you increase the permeability of a cell membrane, which makes it easier for those amino acids that you're eating with your protein, your eggs, your steak, whatever you're eating post-workout, for those to get absorbed into the cell and start repairing the tissue, repairing that muscle right away.
Welcome to the Matrix Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Tokizolu, and welcome to another episode of the show. If you missed our coverage of the Matrix Jiu-Jitsu Invitational Tournament, go to our YouTube channel and check out those matches. The tournament featured Oliver Taza and Paul Urbanek, who are two of the best grapplers under 80 kilogram, especially when it comes to submission only. It was a really exciting tournament, and all of the HD footage is on our YouTube channel. My guest this week is Dr. Jen Case. Jen is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who works for Renaissance Periodization. Renaissance is an online service that links you up with a personal trainer and nutritionist who will help design your nutrition and exercise programs. They have a large team of experts. All of them are very highly qualified when it comes to strength training, nutrition, and also sports training. So for example, if you were someone who practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you wanted to fix your nutrition and strength and conditioning practice, you would probably get matched up with someone like Jen. Jen is truly an expert when it comes to nutrition, strength training, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So she would be a great example of someone who could help you optimize your performance. I learned a lot in this episode, and Jen kind of myth busted a lot of the beliefs that I had about nutrition and strength and conditioning. I hope that she does the same for you, and if you enjoy this, make sure you check out Renaissance Periodization. Please welcome Dr. Jen Case. Jen, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
So I found out about you through Charlie Vinch, who I think you're working with him right now through Renaissance Periodization. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
What can you talk, like, for someone who's never heard of Renaissance Periodization, can you talk about, like, what is it and what's your role?
Basically, we do nutrition and resistance training programming for athletes mainly. And it's not just like your professional athletes, anything from, like your recreational weekend warrior type athlete all the way up to Olympians.
Oh, wow.
So, and we customize the plans for whatever your goal is, and we just help you meet it.
I was looking around on the website for a while, and it was very tempting. I almost gave you guys my credit card info. It's really cool stuff. But how do you modify? I mean, I imagine there's a million ways you could answer this question, but like, how do you modify for someone like, let's use Charlie as an example. Sorry, Charlie. Let's use Charlie as an example as a athletic person, but he's not an Olympian. How do you modify? What does the program look like for someone like that?
Well, can't go into too many specifics, but for him, you have to think about his sport is Jiu-Jitsu, right? So he's going to be different than our strength power athletes. So he gets a little more carbs because he's got a bit more of an aerobic component in his training that our strength power athletes don't have. And then when I design a resistance training program for someone like that, you really want to focus on the main power movements. So, bench, deadlift, squats, rowing motions, because in jiu-jitsu, when you submit somebody, almost every submission includes a rowing or pulling motion of some kind. And so it's really important to develop those back and bicep muscles so you can get a nice tight choke on someone.
That makes a lot of sense.
So kind of, you tailor to that.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you do? A lot of cardio for jiu-jitsu athletes, or do you kind of let just normal jiu-jitsu take care of that?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu, it is cardio, so it takes care of that. If I have a strength power athlete who needs to make a certain weight, then they'll need to add in additional cardio, and that'd be things like incline walking, stair climbing, the boring cardio. I always recommend they take up Jiu-Jitsu because it's a much more entertaining way to do your cardio.
Yeah. I've heard both sides. I've heard a lot of people say Jiu-Jitsu guys don't need cardio. Jiu-Jitsu is everything you need. And then I hear the other side, which say, no, that's not enough. You need to be doing your hill sprints. You need to be doing plyos, etc., etc. Like a program that I did for a little while, I want to get back into it, is called Submission Strength. And they are very big on working on speed for jiu-jitsu athletes. So like it was lots of plyos and things to make you more explosive. So I hear that on one side of the fence, and then I hear on the other side people like you saying, no, you don't need it. Just focus on the big 3 or 4. What do you think about that? Do you think that they're totally wrong?
I think that developing your speed is what you do when you do your technique training. When you do your guard passing drills, that's when you're going to work popping past the legs or doing fast leg drags into a guard pass. So for me, I think that's when you develop the plyos rather than doing plyometrics. I don't know. It could be the type of training that I do though, because that's my style of training. Is that when we're getting ready for competitions, we'll spend a couple weeks where we just mainly focus on doing basic passes, but fast, really working that speed and explosiveness.
That's really interesting. That's kind of how I like to train, honestly. But I've always thought before, like maybe I need to do more cardio and stuff. But yeah, I prefer to do it that way. It's more fun.
Yeah,
it's more fun. Yeah. When you have a jiu-jitsu athlete come to you, what do you notice they're usually weak on in terms of strength and conditioning?
They're usually not very strong. I've only had a few that are what I would consider really strong athletes or strength athletes. Most of them have got their cardio down because they roll all the time. Sometimes it's a big issue. They don't really know what they need to be eating to fuel their body, but it's usually just that they're not used to a normal specific programmed, program that progresses for their needs. They just never have had that experience.
Makes sense. That sounds like me in some cases.
Yeah.
What?
Especially when the smaller guys that are really have that flexible speed game. Some of them have never lifted in their lives, which I'm not insulting it because their game is great, but just a little bit of strength on top of that speed and flexibility, and then they're just really a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah. What would you say is like the consequence of not working on your strength and conditioning?
I think it boils down to when you're in a tournament and you're against someone who is your exact same size, exact same belt rank, everything, your technique is exactly the same level. When all of that is equal, that's when strength comes into play. If all of that is equal, whoever is stronger is going to win because that's the only variable left.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people follow the examples of individuals in jiu-jitsu like Marcelo Garcia who've said in some videos have said they don't do strength and conditioning at all, and then every white belt and blue belt and me sometimes is like, oh yeah, I don't need to do it, I'll just roll, it's fine, it's no big deal. But of course he's the master.
If you have Marcelo Garcia's technique, then no. You don't have to do your strength and conditioning. So because he's going to be hard pressed to find somebody on that same technique level.
Yeah. So. Yeah, your technique has to be at such a high level that it's not even a factor.
Yeah.
And also in other videos, I've heard Marcelo say that he wishes, now that he's older, he wishes that he had done more strength and conditioning because it would have prevented injuries. And
yes,
I think that's the big piece that a lot of people are missing.
Yes, yeah, I see that a lot. I got a guy at my gym. He's stellar in the submission-only competitions, and he's very, very flexible, but he doesn't do any type of strength and conditioning training, and I just look at his poor joints. I'm just like, as he gets older, because he's not doing any strength and conditioning to kind of balance out the muscular strength on each side of those joints, he's going to be hurting as he gets older. But, he's 20 years old. He's invincible right now.
I think that's me. I do a lot of yoga. I don't do too much lifting.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It's not that I think yoga's great. Flexibility training is great. If you do flexibility training 2 to 3 times a week and then strength training 2 to 3 times a week, you'll really be balanced very nicely, and you'll prevent injury while still being able to be nice and mobile and fluid when you're grappling.
That makes sense.
Yeah. You don't have to hit the gym every single day for lifting. You don't have to lift 6 days a week, for 2 or 3 hours at a time. Just 2, 3, 4 times a week, a couple hours, you'll be fine. That's all you really need.
That makes sense. Makes sense. If you had someone who is doing jiu-jitsu and let's say they only could go to the gym 2 days out of the week and they could only train like 45 minutes tops, what do you think they should do? What would they focus on?
Hit the big 4. Hit squats, deadlifts, bench press, and a row of some sort. So that you hit all your major muscle groups, get a full body workout, and then if that's it, that's it. But then that way you do hit every major muscle group.
I've heard a lot about that too, like splits. Some people think like they're great, like you should, every workout you should be doing upper and lower body, and other ones say like, no, that's totally wrong. What do you think about that?
It's more about how frequently you can stimulate the muscle. So if you're able to lift either 4 or 6 days a week, splits are fine, because you're going to be providing that resistance stimuli about every 48 hours to the different muscle groups. So, if you want to do 2 or 3 days of just upper and 2 and 3 days of just lower, and you're lifting 6 days a week, that's fine because you have that regular stimuli to the muscle. But if you're only able to train twice a week, that means you got 2 days of stimuli, so you got to hit all major muscle groups on both days so that you, again, have that stimuli to the muscle, so that you promote, at least repair and a little bit of growth stimuli.
This is you're like an encyclopedia. How did you start working for Renaissance Periodization?
Actually, one of the co-founders, Mike Israetel, and I, we were professors together at UCM, and Mike showed up at our campus. He got hired a year after I did. And he was down in the weight room lifting, and we just got to talking. I was like, hey, why don't you come and try some jiu-jitsu with me? And then he got addicted to jiu-jitsu. We started hanging out. He realized I'm a genius and demanded that I come work for the company.
Did you quit teaching after that, or did you kind of like naturally gravitate away from it?
I retired from teaching mainly because Renaissance Periodization gives me the freedom that I need to train and compete more.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what I want to focus on right now.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it wasn't any kind of like bad split from teaching or anything like that. It was that, I wanted the freedom to be able to go to different schools and train, and I want to be able to compete, while I'm still young enough and able-bodied to compete.
Yeah, that's cool. How long have you been doing jiu-jitsu for, all in all?
6 years.
Wow. Did you say 6 or 16?
16.
16. That's what I thought you said.
Yes.
It kind of like glitched out there for a second on the call. It's like 6 years. Whoa. 16 sounds a lot more like it. Who do you currently train with?
Yeah. Jason Bircher in Kansas City. He's a Renato Tavares black belt.
Oh, okay. I know Renato. I mean, not like personally. I know Renato. We go way back. No, but the school where I started training is one of his affiliates. It's the team in Baltimore, Maryland, and I met him once at a seminar he did, and really nice guy.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, really nice guy. Just brutal style of jiu-jitsu. He's like a pit bull.
Yes. Yeah, I love training with Renato and Jason because they're both, smaller in stature guys. Both of them are maybe like 5. I think Renato's 5'5", Jason's like 5'8". They're both in the lightweight category, but the amount of like pressure and speed and force that they could develop is amazing. I just love learning from them.
Yeah, that's cool. What type of style do you like to play for jiu-jitsu? Do you like to do
slow and pressure?
Slow and pressure.
So, very, very slow. Like I call it the barnacle game. I basically get a hold of you and I just stick to you the whole time.
You know, I've heard that's a like very good way to roll if you want to roll forever. You know, like
Yes.
people like me, I like to be quick and fast and things like that. But I've been told that I'm gonna have to change in like 20 years. I'll have to adopt more of the barnacle style. So looking forward to that.
Yes, I don't move fast. I'm old. I go slow.
What do you do personally for your own strength and conditioning that lets you keep training?
I do the split. I lift 4 days a week. So 2 days are upper body, where I split it into push-pull motions. And I do 6 to 8 exercises of push-pull motions. And then the other days are leg days, where I hit the squats and the deadlifts.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool. How have you trained in the past that like you regret? You know what I mean? Like what mistakes have you made over the years?
I think one of the big mistakes I made when I was younger is I had no idea how to eat properly. So when I was in college, I had no idea how to fuel my body, and I depleted myself a lot because I didn't understand how to properly make weight and that sort of thing. I did make the young kid mistake of I'm never going to tap. So I've got some aches and pains from not tapping when I should have tapped, and that sort of thing. And I never turned down a match. As I've gotten older, I've learned it's okay when that, crazy guy wants to roll with you. It's fine to say no.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I would not say no. So I got smashed up and smashed around quite a bit, and that kind of wore out my body a little early on. And then with lifting, it's more, it wasn't that I had poor lifting technique. I had poor periodization. I did not know how to develop a microcycle or a proper mesocycle. And so I did just kind of random lifting until I was in grad school and finally figured out, through research, how to properly program a lifting program for myself.
For people who like are listening and are saying like, what the heck is a microcycle and a mesocycle? What can you talk about that for like a few seconds?
Yeah, so your microcycle is going to be kind of what you're doing that week. It's a very short period of time. So like basically like the split we just talked about, that's my microcycle. And then your mesocycle it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks depending on how you lift. And with the mesocycles that I design, they gradually ramp up in intensity. So your sets are going to increase. Your reps will stay the same throughout. Your sets will increase and your weight will increase until you get to where you're almost training to fatigue. And then you take a deload week in which you cut down the weight and the sets so that your body can fully recover. And then you move on to your next mesocycle.
I've been told that's the way to do it.
Yes.
As far as strength and conditioning is concerned.
Yeah.
Have you done in the past other, I guess, styles of strength and conditioning? Like, have you ever tried gymnastics training, for example, or do you mostly stick with like the powerlifting style?
It's been powerlifting for me, yeah. And it's not to say that Olympic style lifting, the more explosive lifts, would not be beneficial to Jiu-Jitsu. It's just if you're going to be doing those kind of lifts, you need to have a coach who can properly instruct you on those because there's a lot of technique involved, and I just never had that opportunity.
Yeah, I got really into Olympic lifting for like a year, and it's so hard. And honestly, the thing with it is it's just as technical as Jiu-Jitsu in a lot of ways.
Yes.
If not more so.
Yeah, and people, I think, don't realize that. They're like, oh, I'm just going to go in, I'm going to just do a snatch today. And it's like, no, you need to make sure you have proper technique so you don't hurt yourself while trying to do that movement.
Yes, and you need to work on your flexibility like crazy, to get to like the bottom of a snatch with your arms locked out overhead. It takes forever. It's I mean, if you love Olympic lifting, then great, go for it for sure. But like, I didn't have the time with Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
It's so much work. Like, I want to work on my Jiu-Jitsu technique. I don't want to work on my snatch and clean and jerk. But But you can definitely get like really strong if you're really good at it.
Yep, you can get strong, explosive movements if you know what you're doing.
Whenever you have Jiu-Jitsu guys sign up for, or grapplers, I should say, sign up for Renaissance Periodization, what are they usually doing for strength and conditioning? If they are doing anything at all, what do you usually see?
It varies. Some of them are just doing what their high school wrestling coach told them to do. Some of them have maybe found a 5-3-1 style lifting, which I'm not insulting the 5-3-1 style lifting. It's great for strength development. But for jiu-jitsu, where they're trying to actually build muscle, they're going to need more of a hypertrophy style training where they're doing a higher amount of reps per set. If you're only doing 5 reps, that's strength training. For hypertrophy, you're going to need 10 to 12 reps or more.
So do you do a lot of that for Renaissance Periodization? Do you normally prescribe much higher reps?
Yes. Yeah, most of the people that I'm working with are needing to build muscle. I do have a couple athletes that I'm helping to peak for their shows and their competitions. So then they're more in a strength phase. But if you're wanting to, build more muscle, then you're going to need to be more in that hypertrophy phase before you worry about a strength phase.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you help? This is something I've always struggled with since I started doing jiu-jitsu, is the amount of, it's almost like in jiu-jitsu there's no off season. Like in a lot of other sports, there's a designated off season where you say, I am not, there's nothing much going on during this time. That's my time to focus on strength and conditioning. But with jiu-jitsu, you're always competing, you're always rolling hard, you're always training for something. So how do you work that in with a deload phase? Does that make sense?
So you basically need to pick which tournaments you're going to hit. And it's a little bit harder with the whites and blues because they have tournaments they can go to every weekend if they really want to. There's so many local tournaments. Whereas when you get up with the higher ranks, right, our big ones are going to be the European Open in January, Pan Ams in March, Adult Worlds in June, and then Master Senior Worlds in August. So you can kind of plan your entire macro cycle around those big 4, and you can schedule in, prolonged deload phases and that sort of thing. So when you know your specific tournaments you're training for, that's what makes it a lot easier. But it is difficult when you're working with a lower rank and they want to hit every single tournament every weekend. It's hard to really get a good program going for them unless there are certain tournaments where they don't care if they just kind of go out fatigued.
Yeah.
So you really pick and choose what are you working towards.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you adjust for just normal jiu-jitsu class? Let's say there's someone who trains jiu-jitsu 6 days a week, and they go pretty when they come to you and sign up, they've been training hard at every practice, and they still want to go every day, but they also want to get stronger. Do you tell them to scale back their training a little bit, or how do you adjust for that?
It really, in an ideal world, if I could control everything, I would have them train jiu-jitsu in the morning and hit it hard as they want to hit it in the morning, and then lift in the evening. Their lifting performance will be poor. That is to be understood. But their primary focus is jiu-jitsu. So you want to have the most energy, right, the most refreshed muscles during that time. You can lift. Your lifting is not going to be stellar, but it'll still be enough stimuli to promote growth and development, right? But that's the performance you care less about.
Yeah.
If their focus is, hey, it's okay if my jiu-jitsu takes a hit right now, I need to get bigger muscles so I can be stronger, then we flip-flop it. Lift in the morning so that you're, when you have the most amount of rest and your muscles are prepped and ready to go, hit the weights hard. Understand in the evening your jiu-jitsu is going to take a hit. And that's not to say you're going to get submitted by, people that are just not great, but you're not going to be performing at your top tier. You just kind of have to pick and choose which one is going to be less of a focus during that time.
I feel like it's almost, maybe this is just me, a lot of these questions are coming from my own journey, but sometimes when I do that, it almost feels like I'm disrespecting jiu-jitsu somehow. I feel like there's this mental block where it's almost like, oh, I can't, I don't want to go into practice and not give it my all. If I say to myself, okay, jiu-jitsu is getting put on the side right now because I want to work on strength and conditioning, there's a thing that happens in my head where I think, oh, I'm I don't care about jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu, it's so I feel like I need to, that might be an issue. Do you find that, or is that just me?
Yeah, I mean, you're not disrespecting jujitsu because you're getting stronger to improve your jujitsu. So it's kind of like, there'll be times when I need to develop a certain move. And so for a few months, I'll mainly be rolling with whites and blues because I'm trying to develop a new move. So I'm not grappling at my best because, this move is not part of my repertoire yet, so I'm still working the kinks out. So during that time, my jujitsu will suffer, but in the end, it's going to improve my jujitsu as I add in that new move. And it's the same thing with strength training, right? For a while, your jujitsu will suffer because you're focusing on that, but in the end, it's going to improve your jujitsu overall.
Yeah. And also, you will stay on the mats longer.
Yes.
And which is why I'm thinking about, I know I should. Like I said, a lot of these questions are coming from my journey. I know I need to focus more on this. So I feel like I'm your target audience in a lot of ways. Or at least.
Well, and really, if you're just going to lift twice a week, that's only 2 days of jiu-jitsu that have to suffer.
That's true.
So, yeah.
That's true. Do you another issue that I've found with lifting, and others have told me as well, is the soreness. How sore you get after squats and deadlifts and heavy lifts like that. And a lot of people, me included, don't do those because it makes you so sore. Does that go away after a little while? Or are we doing something wrong? Should we not be getting that sore? Or
yes, the soreness will decrease, and yes, you are doing something wrong. Whenever you do your mesocycle, you should not be training to fatigue every day. So if I program a 5-week mesocycle, weeks 1 through 4, you will be getting closer and closer to fatigue. So during week 1, when you lift, you're going to stop your reps about 4 shy of failure. Okay? So you hit rep 12 and you're like, man, I can bust out 15 or 16 more. Week 1, you stop.
Okay.
And then week 2, you increase the weight, increase the sets, and you hit it again and you hit rep 12 and you're like, I could still hit 14, 15 reps, but you're only going to go 3 from failure that time. And then week 3, you go 2 reps shy of failure. And then week 4, that's when you go to failure. Okay? But then week 5 is deload, and that's when you fully recover. So during week 4, you're going to be sore. That's the week that your jiu-jitsu is going to take the biggest hit just because everything hurts. But then you deload, you recover, and you get 3 solid weeks of training, 1 week of being sore.
When you have people go through a deload cycle, do you tell them to back off jiu-jitsu a little bit too, or are they still...
Yeah, back off. Still do your technique. When you choose, if you're at a gym where you're allowed to choose your rolling partners, choose easier rolls, or pair up with somebody and be like, hey, can we just flow for this roll? Yeah. Instead of going all in.
I imagine most people will feel like doing that anyway because it sounds like they're probably feeling pretty destroyed at that point.
They need a little time to recover.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never heard it explained like that. I've heard mesocycles explained before, but I've never, and with a deload week and all of that, but I've never thought of it in the terms of you ramp up every week,
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. I've heard of deload weeks and I've tried deload weeks, but I think the problem is, you have to be smart about the weeks that lead up to it.
Yes.
So I don't want to I know, like you said, you maybe can't talk about a lot of the details, but for nutrition, how do you factor that in? I mean, I know would you say, hypothetically, if someone came to you and they said, hey, I only have time right now in my life to focus on either lifting or nutrition, which would you say is more important?
That's a tough one. I would probably say nutrition. Yeah, that's a tough one though. But yeah, because if they can get their nutrition squared away and get that to become a habit, then hopefully they can focus on lifting later on.
Yeah. What? How do you adjust the nutrition plan for a jiu-jitsu athlete, just in kind of broad terms?
So what you want to look at when you're developing your diet is you want your protein to be kind of steady throughout the day. because you don't store a lot of amino acids in the human body. You have a very small pool in your bloodstream. But if you need to build muscle or repair any kind of tissue, you need to be taking in protein throughout the day. Otherwise, your body starts to break down non-essential proteins like muscles to get the amino acids that it needs. So about every 3 to 5 hours, you need to be eating some protein. I always recommend animal protein because it's a complete protein, has all 9 of your essential amino acids. But if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you can still get all 9 essential amino acids. It just takes a little more planning. So that's the first part. With your carbohydrates, you want to center your carbs around your workout window. So if you're not training until the evening, you're actually not going to take in most of your carbs until after practice. You'll take in about a third of your carbs before training, and then the other 2/3 will be in the meals that follow your training time. And then fats are the reverse. You want fats to be away from your workout window. So if you're working out in the evening, have your fats in the morning. And with fats, you're looking at your healthy fats, your omega-3s, your omega-6s, your unsaturated fatty acids.
How do you adjust the carbs for someone who is, like we said before, in the perfect scenario, they do jiu-jitsu in the morning and then they lift at night that day? So do they pretty much eat carbs that entire day? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 2-a-days are wonderful because you get carbs and you get the high glycemic carbs, so you get like cereal or Pop-Tarts, Fig Newtons after that first workout. Yes, 2-a-day training is wonderful for eating.
Okay, great. That's good news. Good news of great joy.
Yeah.
So, do you advocate, I've heard all sorts of numbers, like, for example, 2 grams of protein for every pound of body weight. Do you advocate that, or do you say like a little less or a little more? I've heard so many numbers.
I look at your estimated lean mass.
Okay.
So rather than thinking about your absolute body weight, look at your, guesstimate about how much % body fat you're at, and then go for the 2 grams per pound of actual lean body mass. So for fellas, if you're, a decent shaped fella, you're probably around 8 to 10% body fat. For your normal shaped females, they're usually around 20 to 25% body fat.
That makes a lot of sense, but I've never heard it explained that way. And I feel like I've said that a lot, this chat. That just makes sense. So again, this is like, I'm hoping that like some of the listeners are like just like me and having the same types of issues. Otherwise, I'm just like, I hope you guys are benefiting from this as much as I am. So going into my personal program is I take a lot of BCAAs, and I don't do any like whey protein or anything like that. Sometimes I'll take hemp protein, but mostly I just do BCAAs in a pill form. I just take a handful of BCAA pills like before practice and after practice, and I feel good. But do you think that protein powders and stuff like that are really important, or can they be kind of pushed to the side if you do something else?
I would recommend the whey protein over your BCAA supplement for 2 reasons. One, the whey protein has all of your BCAAs in it. Okay, because whey protein does come from it's an animal-based protein. It's one of the proteins you find in milk, so it has all 9 of your essential amino acids. So rather than only getting a few amino acids like you would with the BCAAs, you get all 9. And because it's a complete protein, like a whole protein, it's going to be digested better in your small intestine, so you actually absorb more of those amino acids. With the BCAAs, because they're single, concentrated, purified amino acids, they actually overwhelm the absorptive sites in your small intestine, and you can end up excreting most of them out.
Really?
Instead of absorbing them.
Maybe I shouldn't take so many. I take like tons. Like whenever I remember to take some, I like pop a handful of the pills. Maybe I should slow that down.
Yeah, because you're literally pissing away your money.
Yeah,
so
I am.
You don't want to do that.
That sucks. Okay, thanks, Jed. I'm gonna stop pissing away my money now. No wonder I always have to pee. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. But it's true.
Yeah.
But it's true. What do you think about like hemp protein, or I don't know, anything other than whey that is or plant protein? Are those like just as good as whey, or is whey way better?
With the plants, if you're going to go for a plant protein, I recommend soy because it is, again, a complete protein.
Really? Because I've also heard that soy is not good for men because it can increase your estrogen levels. Is that true, or is that fake shit?
If you consume your body weight in soy, you could potentially grow breast tissue. But you would have to consume 150 pounds of soy before that happens. If you're adding, 20 grams to your Gatorade when you're working out, no, you're not going to develop any type of breast tissue or lactation or, yeah.
That's good to know. Jen, you're saving me like so much money in this episode.
Yeah.
This will be like my most profitable episode yet because I just saved a ton of money. But it makes a lot of sense. Because I've always heard that. I've always heard like, don't eat soy if you're a man because it's bad for your testosterone levels. But I don't know. I haven't like done the research, so I don't know.
Yeah, you have to consume, literally, I'm not exaggerating, you would literally have to consume your body weight. Because if you look at the studies they did in the rats, right, they got this 6-ounce rat consuming, 6 ounces of soy protein. So,
yeah.
Most humans don't do.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you like hemp protein, or is it not good at all?
I don't have a problem with it. I'm a carnivore, so I'll go for the whey protein because it's the most rapidly absorbing and it's got all my essential amino acids. If you prefer the hemp protein, that's fine. You just want to make sure that you're consuming complementary proteins to it.
Okay. How do you adjust these programs for vegetarians or vegans?
I recommend my colleague Mel Davis, who knows how to work with vegans. That's her forte, and she's also Jiu-Jitsu. She's a Jiu-Jitsu brown belt out in California. She won Master Senior Worlds last year, so great. She's very well accomplished too. But she understands vegetarian diets and working with vegans, and so I recommend her.
What was her name again?
Mel Davis.
Mel Davis. Okay, that's interesting because I tried being a vegetarian for a few months. I'm always like experimenting with it, I would say. I don't try to experiment too much because I know like if you change your diet like crazy, then it can ruin some of the things you're trying to do. But I did just try like not eating meat for a long time, and I didn't notice a ton of benefits. Honestly, I'm sorry, vegetarians and vegans. I don't know. I didn't notice like superhuman speed or anything. I just noticed really nothing. Really nothing changed for me. I took a lot of BCAAs, and I felt like that helped me, retain muscle mass to an extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you are choosing to be a vegan and you're an athlete, you will be taking a lot of supplements because just to get your protein where it needs to be.
Are BCAAs derived from animals, or are they vegan friendly? Do you know?
They're vegan friendly because they're completely synthetic.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Because I always think like it seems obvious to me that if you're a vegan athlete, you should probably take a lot of BCAAs, but I don't know. Maybe there's a reason they're not. Or maybe they are, and I'm just an idiot.
You can take soy or pea protein. There's other options for them. Okay.
That makes sense. Another nutrition myth that I have in my head is it okay, or okay, I guess that's such a broad term. Is it recommended to eat like carbohydrates and fats in the same meal, or is that not a good idea?
It really just depends on the time of day. If it's immediately post-workout, I would limit your fats because you're wanting to get those carbs delivered to your muscles that just got done training rapidly. Whenever you add fats into a meal, that's going to slow down the digestion rate of that meal. So, if you're not training until evening, add fats to your breakfast, and you can have a little carbs with breakfast, that's fine. But that'll slow down how quickly your body digests that meal, so you're able to stay fuller a little bit longer.
Can you explain for someone who has no idea, how do carbohydrates help with you gaining muscle after a workout or before a workout?
So it's really a multiple thing. So one thing that it does is by taking in your carbohydrates post-workout, you're going to have a spike in your insulin. When you have a spike in insulin, you have a decrease in cortisol. And cortisol is the primary catabolic hormone in the body. It breaks down tissue. So post-workout, if you don't take in carbohydrates, if you're like, oh, I got to make my fight weight, I'm not going to eat post-workout, that cortisol stays elevated and your muscle breakdown post-workout stays elevated. If you take in your carbohydrates, you're going to spike your insulin, so your cortisol goes down. Okay? So then you can actually begin the repair process of the muscles that you just worked out. And once you start repairing them, then you can start regrowing them. Okay? And so that's one thing. Another thing that it does, by taking the carbohydrates, you increase the permeability of a cell membrane, which makes it easier for those amino acids that you're eating with your protein, your eggs, your steak, whatever you're eating post-workout, for those to get absorbed into the cell and start repairing the tissue, repairing that muscle right away. So it's a two-prong effect.
Do you recommend people during jiu-jitsu class to sip on a workout drink of some sort? Because I know that is helpful for lifting. Is it also true for jiu-jitsu?
Yes, I definitely do. Yeah, I recommend sipping on, I do protein, whey protein and Gatorade, a 4-to-1 ratio. So 4 parts Gatorade, 1 part whey protein. And then just because you need those carbs to keep you energized so you don't hit a wall while you're training. And then the protein will also help to kind of set the stage for muscle repair post-exercise.
Okay. And then you just tell them to kind of sip on it periodically throughout training.
Right, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you're lifting 2 times a day, that's 2 workout drinks, right? Or, I mean, not lifting, training,
yes.
Like you lift and you train. Okay.
Yep. Each training session gets its own shake.
Okay. Do you, what about like some sort of carb powder, like dextrose powder? Do you ever use that, or do you just go with Gatorade?
You can use dextrose powder, or you can pay a quarter of the cost and do Gatorade.
What do you, I feel like Gatorade gets a bad rap, but I mean, it seems great for...
If you're drinking it for, it's sugar. It's flavored sugar. That's all it is. And with a little bit of potassium and a few electrolytes added. But it's just sugar. And if you're drinking it for the purpose of drinking sugar, it's perfect. But if you're drinking it because you think it's a health beverage, well, then you're way off because it's pure sugar. So you just have to consider, why are you drinking it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I used to, like I said, I was really into Olympic weightlifting for a little while, and I was doing that. I was drinking a big shake during my lifting sessions of whey protein, BCAAs, like extra BCAAs, and dextrose, and then water. Mm-hmm. And it was gross, but so I never stuck with it because it was gross, and I was like, I don't feel like doing this. I don't know if it's that beneficial, but I never thought about doing it for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Again.
Yes, I recommend. I go for the vanilla whey and the blue Gatorade. So it's a lovely flavor combination.
That does sound really good, actually. What type of... There's so many whey proteins out there on the market. What do you usually recommend?
There's all kinds, and you can go into all kinds of research, and you can spend all kinds of money if you really want to. But you're just basically looking for a whey protein isolate. I don't spend crazy amounts of money on my whey protein. I'll get a 5-pound bag for about $30. I go for the simple EAS brand, and that's mainly because it mixes the best with water. Because when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, I don't want to have to swallow down anything chunky. Because your stomach's already upset from rolling, so I want something that's really palatable, easy to consume, and so that's the brand I go for.
Yeah, I hear there's so many different brands. Like you walk into any nutrition store or just Google whey protein and you'll find a million. It's so easy to get confused.
Yeah.
What extra supplements do you recommend people usually take? Like zinc? Do you do multivitamins or anything like that? Or
I do recommend a multivitamin. It doesn't need to be, one of the expensive GNC multivitamin packs that has 70 different horse pills that you need to swallow at one time. Just a simple, even just a Centrum multivitamin. I go for the chewy ones because I hate swallowing pills. So, but I do recommend a multivitamin. For ladies, I recommend a calcium and vitamin D supplement. because we tend to be at risk for osteoporosis. So taking in a little extra calcium is good for us. Casein protein at bedtime, I recommend, because you're going into an 8-hour fast, and casein is the slowest digesting of all the proteins. So it kind of carries your body through that fast. And when you sleep, remember, that's when the bulk of your muscle growth and repair occurs. So by taking in that casein supplement right before bedtime, you have those amino acids being gradually released into your bloodstream so that it'll help with the growth and repair while you're resting. And, that's about it. You may need an iron supplement, particularly females of childbearing age may need an iron supplement. But other than that, there's really not a lot of supplements that are mandatory if you're eating a well-balanced diet.
Do you recommend anything that specifically helps sleep, like melatonin or tryptophan or any of those, or no?
There's really not enough evidence to support them helping you sleep. If you're training in the evening, it's going to be hard to sleep because you're all amped up from training and your body's exhausted, but your mind is racing. And so that's more of just being able to figure out ways to calm yourself so that you are able to sleep.
Oh, that makes sense. Jen, this has been very educational and has impacted how I will spend my money on supplements and amongst many other things. Before we wrap this up, is there anything you want to promote or talk about?
Jiu-Jitsu for life, and make sure, I highly recommend Renaissance Periodization. Even if you don't go for the one-on-one coaching, we do have a lot of templates, a lot of good books, ebooks available that can provide all the information I talked about today in greater detail, and it'll really, you get your nutrition lined up and it'll really help your training immensely.
Jen, thank you so much for being on the show. Let's do it again sometime in the future.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much. Thanks again to Jen for coming on the podcast. I really learned a lot from this episode. True to what I said during the interview, I've stopped taking so many BCAAs, and my pee has definitely decreased by a significant margin, for those of you who are wondering. Once again, if you missed the tournament, go to our YouTube channel and watch our coverage of the Matrix Jiu-Jitsu Invitational Tournament. This submission-only tournament with EBI overtime rules featured Oliver Taza and Paul Urbanek. Make sure you go check out the match that those guys had, along with all of the other matches, again, on our YouTube channel. Thank you everyone who supports the show. If you haven't already, go to iTunes or Stitcher and give us a 5-star rating and a review. It's a wonderful way to support the show, and it helps more people find out about these episodes. Thanks to Vinny Russo and Waves Overhead for providing all of the music that accompanies this podcast. If you want links to their work, go to matrix.com. To Make Amends by Waves Overhead is the theme song of this show, and I played a little bit at the beginning, and I'll play the rest of it for you right now.